and a very warm welcome to all the viewers. Welcome to another session of HAS series. Today I'll be speaking about herd immunity, and this is one of the earlier sessions when I'm going to talk a lot about vaccines, immunization, vaccination, and immunity provided by vaccines. Today we are going to look at herd immunity and some important aspects of this concept. What do we understand by a herd? Herd generally refers to mostly for cattle or for animals who stay together in a group, who share a common purpose. So if we have to apply this concept of herd to people or populations, we consider as a herd as people staying together. Especially we can refer it to the word community. So people who stay together in a community who share common goals can be considered as participants of a herd. And what is immunity? Immunity is nothing but the protective mechanisms by which people are protected against an infection or a disease. So when we talk about herd immunity, it refers to immunity offered to a group of people and not to individuals. So when we talk about herd immunity, let's look at firstly what it all means. So what I'm going to flash in the next slide is a long kind of definition of what is herd immunity. So the words in this particular definition are very important, especially the word indirect. It refers to indirect protection from infection of susceptible members of the population. When we have spoken about chain of infection, we have spoken about who is a susceptible host, a person who is most likely to acquire the infection. So if such susceptible members of the population are protected indirectly from infection, and through this, if the whole population is going to be protected on the whole, this is known as herd immunity. And who is responsible for herd immunity is those individuals who have been immunized. So either they are immunized or they acquire immunity through natural infection. So this is the definition of herd immunity. What more about herd immunity can we look at? It contributes to level of resistance of a given population group or a herd or a community to an infection. So essentially, there is an immunological barrier to spread of disease in that herd or that group of people. So through this, what happens is susceptible individuals are protected, though they may not be immunized. So this is quite an important aspect to understand, that if few people in a community are immunized against that infection or disease, it is likely that their immune status is going to protect other individuals who are considered to be susceptible from acquiring the infection. Now, whether this occurs in all cases or not depends on various factors. Now, before I actually demonstrate those factors, let's quickly look at what is infection. So when we consider infection, let's consider three compartments. So this is a compartment of susceptibles. So those people who are likely to acquire the infection. Now those from the susceptibles who acquire infection are then diseased. So we consider them as a case of the disease. Now once a person has suffered from that disease or has been case of the disease, he or she is likely to be immune against that disease if it occurs again. So the best example of this would be diseases like measles or chickenpox. So once a person who is susceptible to measles acquires the infection from another person who is suffering from measles, that person becomes a case. Once a person has suffered from measles, that person then is immune to that disease. So when we consider infectious diseases, we need to remember that these are the three compartments which we are looking at when we consider them in a herd. Now this infection which is there has to proceed in discrete generations. What I mean by that is transmissibility of that infection is very, very important. So more communicable the disease is, higher is the susceptibles and the number of cases, and then higher would be the immunity offered by that infection. And this infection has to have an ability to transmit in a homogeneously mixing population of size n, so that population could be growing, it could be of an infinite size, but everyone has got the property to meet other person, and by that help in the transmission of disease. So these are important things which we need to understand when we consider herd immunity. Now, to demonstrate herd immunity better, I have a small animation which will help us understand how herd immunity protects those people who are susceptible, and how it also helps in reducing incidence of the disease. In other words, new cases of the disease from occurring. So let's have a look at this animation here. Now, before I run this animation, let's look at what are the components shown in this particular film. So the red circles and the red shapes basically are those who are cases of the disease. The green ones are the ones who are immune to the disease, either on account of immunization or because of natural infection. And the yellow ones are the ones who are susceptible. So in this herd, which I'm going to demonstrate now, the red ones depict the cases or those who are infected. Yellow circles or the yellow ones are the ones which are susceptible, and the green ones are the ones which are immune or which are protected. So let's look at what happens in this particular picture. So when all these components are existing in a herd, how they interact with each other is very, very important. So let's look at what the green ones do to the yellow ones and the red ones because of the herd immunity. So here you can see that those who are protected against the infection are going to protect the susceptibles. So they form a kind of a barrier against infection, and consequently what happens is, you can make out here is the number of red circles also reduces, which means that the incidence of the disease goes on reducing as the herd immunity increases. Now let's look at how to increase the herd immunity and what are the important aspects which we need to look at, or what are the requirements when we look at herd immunity. So when we talk of herd immunity, we need to realize that the coverage of vaccination in that particular population has to be very high, relatively high, if we need to look at protection of susceptible. So let's look at what are the requirements of herd immunity. We need to remember that the disease agent which we are talking of has to be restricted to single host species within which the transmission occurs, and the best example for which is smallpox. So the disease agent has to be capable enough of sustaining only in humans. So there should be no reservoir. So for those diseases where reservoirs exist, it's quite difficult for herd immunity to protect the susceptibles. So if we talk about smallpox eradication, it's not herd immunity which helped in eradication of smallpox. It is more of the containment of the source of infection and surveillance which helped eradicate smallpox in humans. Okay. Second requirement is there is relatively direct transmission from one member of the host species to another, which entails that when we talk about mode of transmission, those diseases spread by direct contact are the ones which can be considered for herd immunity to protect the susceptibles. And lastly, infections must induce solid immunity, as does immunization. So if this particular disease has got vaccine against it, so even a person acquiring natural infection and a person acquiring immunization, both have to have solid immunity. So that's a requirement when we talk about herd immunity. Now, before we actually go on to understanding the requirements and the considerations of herd immunity, we need to look at what is the dynamics of disease transmission which is required. So if I am infected, what happens is each infected individual in that particular herd must be able to transmit the infection at least to one another individual. In other words, what I mean is the secondary attack rate of that disease should be high. So for communicable diseases like measles or mumps, what happens is the secondary attack rate is very high. So it means that if one individual is infected, that individual on an average is going to infect at least one or more individuals. So because if this doesn't occur, if there is no direct spread, person to person spread, this infection will disappear progressively from the population, or in other words, it's not going to be seen in more individuals. So please remember, those diseases having higher secondary attack rates or higher communicability and higher case fatality, they are the ones which can be protected against infection by herd immunity. So when we look at herd immunity, what are the things which we need to understand? So for herd immunity to be achieved in a population, whether it is high or low, it depends on two things. The effectiveness of the vaccine. So a vaccine which is given to protect people against that particular disease has to be effective enough. What I mean by effective is it should be able to protect the individuals against the disease by producing adequate immunity. So by producing antibodies against that antigen, it should be able to be effective. And secondly, it's important looking at the characteristics of the disease, how the disease spreads, how much is the secondary attack rate, how many people die because of the disease. All this is going to uh, change the herd immunity, and it is going to differ from disease to disease. Now, what is the relevance of herd immunity and immunization? So if a particular disease has got a vaccine coverage of over 90%, for example, it's going to imply that the herd immunity of that particular group is also very high on account of immunization. But we need to consider practically that not in every population can everybody be vaccinated. That's one. And secondly, not all people can be vaccinated either because of their immune status or because of their medical reasons. So what I mean by this is those people who do not have effective immune systems, in other words, those who are immunocompromised either because of a disease status or because of maybe extremes of ages, these people can be effectively protected against a disease by herd immunity. So those who are immune against the disease can offer protection to those who cannot be immunized either on account of their medical reasons or because of their poor immune system. So let's look at those people who depend on herd immunity for protection. So as I mentioned earlier, those without a fully working immune system. So those in whom splenectomy has been done or the spleen doesn't function because of various reasons. Next are those who are on chemotherapy, because of which their immune system gets weakened or they are immunocompromised. Infections like HIV compromising the immune system of a person, they also can largely depend on herd immunity. Then, as I said, extremes of ages. So newborn babies or elderly people whose immune systems are either not developed or have been weakened respectively. And hospitalized individuals, those who have been hospitalized chronically or for a long time, are susceptible to nosocomial infections and their immune status may not be able to cope up with the infections to which they are predisposed to. So all these individuals can depend on herd immunity for protection against that particular disease. So we need to understand that this herd immunity is going to provide an immunological barrier against spread of disease in that particular herd. So for example, if a new infectious disease is introduced in a population in which it hasn't occurred earlier, what will happen? There will be many cases of the disease, right? So the attack rates and the case fatality rates of the disease may be very high, especially amongst those who are susceptible. So what happens is, once this population has acquired immunity through natural infection and those who are susceptible are immunized, for example, then this particular group has got, we can say, a higher herd immunity, or there has been a building up of the herd immunity following both natural infection in this case as well as immunization. So the factors which influence herd immunity are occurrence of clinical and subclinical infection in the herd. So it is quite important to see how many people have been affected by the disease or have been labeled as cases of the disease. Higher the number of cases of the disease, it is likely that these people will then become immune to that particular infection, and then they wouldn't suffer from the disease. But we need to remember one thing over here, that if a particular disease causing agent has got serotypes or it has got various types, the protection which is offered by herd immunity following infection by one particular subtype infection will not protect against another subgroup or another subtype of infection. So it is only specific to a particular species or a group of bacteria or viruses. So it cannot have cross protection against species of bacteria or viruses. This is quite important for us to remember. The second factor or element which influences herd immunity is the immunization status of the herd. So the more number of people immunized in the particular herd, better is the herd immunity and better is its efficacy in protecting the susceptibles. Now the best example for considering herd immunity through immunization is poliomyelitis. Today the world is on the verge of eradication of poliomyelitis, with only a handful of countries not being able to control the transmission. However, it has been proven that by having a high vaccination coverage for poliomyelitis and by achieving herd immunity, the transmissibility of the disease has been reduced. So as I showed you in the animation earlier, those who are immunized will form kind of a barrier between the susceptibles and the infected or the diseased, by which they can protect all those who are susceptible. So the practical problem with poliomyelitis vaccination is we are not able to achieve 100% vaccination coverage. So which means that, for example, if the coverage is 95%, in a group of 100 individuals, there would be 5 who are unvaccinated. Now, for these 5 who are unvaccinated, those 95 who are vaccinated will be able to provide protection. Okay, so that is what is meant by immunization and herd immunity. And third thing is the structure of the herd. Now, this has got a very important influence on immunity of the herd, as we know that there will be constant changes in a herd structure, either on account of new births, deaths, as well as mobility of the populations. So whether the mix of the population is homogeneous or heterogeneous all depends on what changes occur to the herd structure. But the structure of the herd and herd immunity can be kept mostly at a constant level by achieving high vaccination coverage. So we need to consider over here that this herd structure consists of not only the hosts or the population, but also presence and absence of insect vectors or animals or other reservoirs, and also comprises of environmental and social factors which may result in change in the dynamics of the disease. So we need to understand that if we need to consider spread of the disease or occurrence of a disease in epidemic proportions, we need to look at herd immunity. So if herd immunity is sufficiently high, the occurrence of an epidemic of a disease is regarded as highly unlikely. So if we maintain high levels of immunity by a sustainable immunization program, what will happen is the point where the susceptible persons are reduced to a small proportion of population may lead to elimination of the disease, and the best examples of which have been diphtheria and poliomyelitis. But we need to understand that herd immunity has also got its limitations. So it does not protect against all vaccine preventable diseases. So as I said earlier, if people are immunized, they are likely to protect those who are susceptible. But there are exceptions to this. The best example for which is tetanus. As we all know, tetanus is caused and it is caught from a bacteria which is present in the environment, and it does not spread from one person to other. So since there is no direct contact involved, direct, especially person to person contact involved with tetanus, it cannot be protected by herd immunity. So what happens is, even if the coverage of tetanus vaccination in a given population is very high, it doesn't mean that you as an individual will be protected against the disease. What I mean by that is, if you are exposed to maybe infectious material containing the bacterium causing tetanus, and if you are not vaccinated, it's likely that you can suffer from the disease, though the herd immunity of that particular population would be very high. The reason is because this disease does not spread from person to person. So, as I said earlier, we need to remember that herd immunity is important for protecting susceptibles in a population or people in a particular group or a herd. However, it also depends on the characteristics of spread of infection as well as the dynamics of disease transmission. So these are important considerations for herd immunity. Keep watching, do subscribe, and thank you very much.